Hello and welcome. This is AlchemistExe, and it is the end of May, so there's not a whole lot going on. There was a port raid, and there's some reruns going on, but overall it's the lull before June happens. And so, for this video, I want to talk a little bit about Kuza because he's got some extra focus this week, and he is a unit I decided to raise just for experimentation purposes. And then after that, I wanted to do a little bit of speculating about some future units. So far, there's been no indication of what's coming for June, and given the release schedule recently, another Link unit is definitely a very reasonable guess. So I'm going to go into a little more detail about kind of what we've got so far, because that might inform us of what we might be getting in the future, and then a little bit of a deeper dive into some speculations about units that we can be fairly certain will get a Link unit, based on being SSM or based on being protagonist, etc., and talk about what elements they might be. But for now, let me talk a little bit about Kuza. So first and foremost, he's not a unit I would recommend spending gems on in any big way, aside from like discount tickets, that kind of thing. Just because he's got 2 limited mementos, but overall, I don't think you'd be very happy if you spent a bunch of gems to get him and get him all kitted out. However, if the game has already done that for you, like in the case for me, like I just happened to get tons of shards of him and ended up getting his second memento fairly early on. I had a bit of a lull period with Dark, so I just decided to see what he was made of. And overall, I find him to be a very okay unit. Like, he's very much a jack of all trades, a master of none. It's not that his kit is badly designed or it doesn't work, it's just he sort of has like a PvP focus from a very specific era, and that era is definitely over now. There's just too many units with too much protection against CC for his CC based kit to really work in a meaningful way in PvP, and although he does have very, very good damage reduction for physical stuff, nowadays characters would just absolutely eat right through that, assuming that they even had to worry about an enemy's reaction to begin with. So let me just I'll go over the cons first, and then I'll go over the pros of what he has to offer, because I definitely think he can be worth using, just given all of the different things that he can do. So his cons is that his damage is very, very bad without any extensive buffs. Like, if you have the right tools, you can definitely get his damage up there, but it's always going to pale in comparison to characters who are more recently designed to do a lot of damage. And then another con is that his kit is very CC heavy, and there are just going to be times where that's just not going to help you, because a lot of times, especially certain hell maps, enemies are just going to be immune to almost, if not all, forms of CC. So he does now have a cursed silence, which in the exceptionally rare amount of times that would be helpful, that would be really good to have, but it's just not gonna come up that often. And then as far as a final con, he requires 2 limited mementos to really get his full thing, and so that's just an absolute dice roll as to whether or not you would be able to get them, especially because one of his really good buffs is locked behind one of the mementos, so that's definitely a con. Now, as far as pros go, he is a Dark Slash unit, and that by itself is a pro, because Dios Link exists, and he just passively provides buffs to Light and Dark Slash units, so just by being on the same team as him, he's going to be a little bit stronger just for that. He has a light exploit buff. That was the one I mentioned just a moment ago that comes with his memento. That's a fairly rare form of buff to get, so it's good to have, and then it also comes with a dark all attack up, so he's very, very good at that role of especially eliminating light enemies in particular. He also has exceptional range on some of his abilities. He has like a big box that's also a cross, and that can hit things from really, really far away, as we'll see with one of those golden raddies. And then he has a weird mix of physical damage and M-attack scaling, which will almost never matter, but in any instance where there's like a massive P-attack debuff, then he doesn't care about that. But you still want to be doing physical damage for whatever reason. It's kind of nice, and then if you're pairing him with M-attack scaler or M-attack buffers, then he can benefit from that, but just remember he does have the Blade Master scaling, so just raising M-attack isn't going to help you as much. You'd be better off going with an all-stat raiser like Nero or Melville. And then finally, he has a lot of really good synergy with Rado. They both want M attack to a degree. They're both slash units. They're both from Wadetsumi. So he can buff Rado, especially if you're fighting a light element, but even if you're not, he can do a dark up. So the two of them could work very, very well together. And he's also got really good survivability against physical damage with his guard ability. So much like Rado, he's not going to go down easily. So with that out of the way, the next thing I want to do is talk about units that have been released since I started playing, their overall roles, and then speculate about potential upcoming Link units. Okay, so let's start off with this grouping, which is by the role of a unit. So either that's a damage type or a support or tank. Now keep in mind, in this particular instance, Logi and Tyrfing Link are also very, very potent damage dealers. But they're also tanky in their own right. Logi for protecting allies, and then Tyrfing for just not being able to die very easily at all. So that's why I put them in there. But as you can see, there is a ton of slash units. It's the most common damage type. As always, that's never really changed as far as the game goes. So you can always expect to see a little bit more of them. Now, one damage type that is very underrepresented is going to be Strike. Now, technically, Sumeragi is a Strike unit, but because he's all about buffs, I just put him in support, because it's like that's what you really care about, is buffing other people's damage, rather than doing strike damage himself. That's more of an on-the-side thing. So that's definitely something I would look forward to seeing. I know Lindrake is basically the king of Strike, and honestly, king of being dark DPS. There hasn't really been a dark DPS when it comes to that. As we can see here, this is the distribution of the units by their element. Light and water are by far the most represented. Fire has been overall kind of underrepresented, except for all three of the fire units are relatively recent, except for, you know, Surzik was a little while ago, but not super long ago, but definitely dark. So you can see we got most universal support in the game and an exceptional raid buffer, which are great roles to have, but neither one of those is a damage dealer. So I would definitely expect at some point, like, they can't coast on Lindrake forever. Like, I don't want Lindrake to become obsolete. Like, if the content takes such a big shift that Lindrake is no longer suitable for it, I worry for the life of the game. Like, but it would be nice to have another dark DPS who maybe does something a little bit different. Something that maybe they synergize with a different group of units. That's something that I would certainly like to see. And then finally, let's speculate about unreleased Link units. Now, this is not a completely equal grouping. Like, protagonists, 100% safe bet. As long as the game continues to be alive, then I think that there's going to be a Link unit for every protagonist. Holy Guard captains is kind of the next down. I think it's pretty safe given the precedent for them. There's like Ikasa, I'm not totally sure if they're going to count her in the same way, but because she counts in memento groups, stuff like that, I just went ahead and threw her in her. I also threw in the other limited also Sprock characters because Ain's got a Link version, so that's enough precedent for me. I'm hoping that's not like a one-off special thing and that we get to see some Link units for some of those characters, especially Naju, especially if they actually did make him Thunder and gave him some synergy with Orion and Longhao. That would be really fun. But I'll just go down the list, and some of these are all speculations, by the way. I could be completely wrong. I never would have guessed that Kudenstein's Link would be Thunder, so that kind of thing happens sometimes. But these are either somewhat logical expectations based on the lore, based on the mechanics of the character, or it's just what I would want. Like, for example, Ainana in Fire. I would want her to be Fire just because I don't feel like there's been enough Pierce in Fire, and if, especially in magic scaling Pierce, that would be cool. I would like to see that. And then for Water, if Ikasa or Zex were Water, they would be amazing just because Inanji exists. I would love to see that. Now, for Amane, that's probably the most secure I am in estimating and being accurate, just because Celis is Thunder. So far, they've been pretty logical about assigning new elements to the Link units for protagonists, and I could definitely see her being Thunder. And then Naju I mentioned earlier. Now, Wind was a hard one because there weren't a lot of natural fits aside from the fact that if any protagonist unit is going to stay the same element as before, I would see it being Tina, just because she has a lore tie to wind. It's like canonical. But I wouldn't mind having Monzine be wind. It'd be kind of cool because it'd be kind of swapping places with Seda. And then in the case of Dry, if they made him as a somewhat of a counter, like debuffer to all of the very, very strong Thunder units that have been around lately, that would be kind of cool. Bashini being light makes a lot of sense from a lore standpoint. The only thing that would stop me from thinking that he would be light would be the fact that there'd be so much overlap with Dios Link. Like, you would have to have a very, very different kit. But if they did that, then more likely than not, you would get another unit that would work excellently on a Dios team. And then for Kaya being light, that's kind of just cope. Like, it'd be really fun to be able to run her with Zyne on a light team. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, I could see her just staying the same. And then Dark. Dark, I think, is the most important element on this list, just because Dark has been very underrepresented, just in general, but especially in terms of Link units. You know, of course, Anna Rose is a great support unit for it, but we haven't really gotten a really heavy-hitting, like, light or dark element, like light slaying unit. I think Cadanova would be an excellent candidate for that. They always talk about him using the power of darkness, blah, blah, blah. And it would be kind of cool to have, like, especially if he was still a jumper. The only thing that he would need is some kind of knockdown proof, because there's been so much knocking down jumpers added to people's kits that if they made him a jumper without some kind of protection against that, it just wouldn't really work that well. But I would love to see a Dark Elemented Cadanova Link. Dark is also my choice for Kamui as a protagonist. As far as the ones that haven't gotten Link versions yet, it just makes the most sense, given his ties to Wagi now. And then with Zwei, it'd be cool to be able to run her with Noin. And Kagura tied to fire. Lakina, I could see her being light also, but I put her in this category just largely because Dark is an underrepresented element at this point. So yeah, that is about all I've got to say as far as these speculations go. I'll be curious to see, one, how many of these units end up getting Link versions, and then two, how many of these predictions end up coming true. But for right now, let's go ahead and take a look at the banners. And here we are at the banners. So this overview is going to be fairly quick, which is good because this video has already been a little bit longer than I expected. I did not expect the last section to take 7 minutes. I thought it was going to be like 3. But to start with, there are 2 types of coin banners. It is just a limited pool, so it's not my favorite type. I prefer the pickup ones better, where you can just choose. But nonetheless, there are some very good units on here. And if you were especially hoping to get Sumeragi and you didn't get your chance, given that his banner style wasn't the greatest, this might be a good opportunity if you were already going to maybe finish raising Nimble, Andex, Zangetsu, Riza, Azami. Really, honestly, like, I don't think there's a bad choice in this selection. Of course, some of that will depend on how ready you are for them, like memento-wise, but overall, good selection. So these coins could potentially go to very good use. And then equivalent memento banner. Now this one you can choose just because it's a fairly large group. All of these units want their mementos fairly badly, but definitely special shout out to Nimble as far as having multiple ones that he is going to need. If you're anything like me, when you started playing, his first memento should be taken care of already, but definitely getting the other 2 is going to be a high priority if you are wanting to get him as strong as he can be. But other than that, it's just the usual, basically a 10-step with a selector is the best way to look at it. Then we get to the Kuza banner. Now we've seen this style before. It's good for maxing out a unit. As I said at the intro, he's not really a unit I would recommend doing this for. However, if he's a unit you absolutely love, especially if you've got 3 discount tickets, then you could definitely go to town and you'd have him and you'd have a chunk of Enlightenment shards to use. I don't think that's the best use of gems, but you can never really say no to your favorite character. And then he's got a memento banner too. His mementos are very, very helpful for him. I really like the buffs that they can provide, so it is good. It's just, I don't think at this stage in the game that you should spend gems this way, just because these are the kind of mementos that could fall into your lap fairly easily just by chasing other much more scarce things. And then other than that, there's the banners that I consider really good discount burners when you've got no other real option, which is the just 5 guaranteed units or mementos. As you can see, I burned my discount tickets this way just because I wasn't super interested in the coin banner, and I'd rather just get like 15 mementos for 1500 gems. So that's what I ended up doing, and I'll close out the video showcasing the results for that. I would never recommend paying full price for these, but it's one of those things where if you're just burning a discount ticket, I think it's a good use of gems in that case, because you might end up with something very, very helpful. And then old stuff from last week, the Celestine memento is still around if you wanted to take another stab at that. But yeah, that is it for the banners, so let's go ahead and do a little bit of summoning. Okay, let's jump right into the summoning. So overall, link units that I don't have mementos for yet. There's a few memento units that I'd like to get that I don't have yet, as far as like, I think Tamis and Ugachi are probably the 2 big ones. Oh, you know, obviously besides Logi. That's probably the biggest one. Overall, though, I tend to keep my expectations low on this one because it's just an absolute dice roll. Although not bad to start, because I do not have this memento max limit broken, and I very recently got all 7 of Longhouse gates maxed, and then for her and Orion, I got the first level of the Enlightened Bond. I do not regret burning 200 rainbow shards that way. They are just such strong units, I think that it's worthwhile, and I still got like a little under 2,000 rainbow shards, so it's not too big of a deal. But another thing that was on my mind recently is the Phantom of the Kill just had its end of service. So that is another Fujigumi game that no longer exists. Now, in the case of that game, it does have a successor in the form of Aster Tarticus. They have some of the same characters. They're both that kind of Fire Emblem style of strategy game. So it's not like it's just disappearing into the void. It kind of has a secondary version, but still kind of sad to see it go. It lasted a long time. It's really popular. I actually have a Phantom of the Kill art book that I bought at an anime convention a few years ago. I have a bunch of Tagatame ones too, but I had to order those online. I was not able to ever just stumble upon those. But yeah, I was thinking about that. It got me on a bit of a kick for looking up how well some of the other games have been doing. I don't know why, but like Aster Tarticus, it's very easy to find their revenue because it shows up on the list of like Gacha revenue or like Sensor Tower. For Tagatame and for some of the other ones, like I want to say like Ragnador, the one that's kind of like what if Onmyoji was Brave Frontier looking game. And then there's like some other idle, like real life idle looking game that Fujigumi has. And then of course the Square Enix tie-ins of Brave Exvius and War of the Visions. It overall seems like very middle of the pack. Like assuming this is accurate, the last I saw for April of 2024 was like 700k for Aster Tarticus. So it's no big shot. You know, there's no Fate Grand Order or Hoyo game. But it could definitely be a lot worse. I think it's a very much a niche. It's, you know, a non-established IP in a genre that's not for everyone. So I think in that case, it could be worse. I had been a little concerned because they postponed the launch of the global version. And so far, ever since then, there hasn't been much activity related to anything global. So I'm still a little concerned about that, but hopefully we learn more in the future. It is, in general, I will consider playing it if it gets a global release. It really depends on who the publisher is. If it's just the same Gumi Inc. that handles War of the Visions right now, I'm probably going to pass just because I don't think they're very good at their job. Look at that. We have one of the units that's kind of high on my list. Because now that I have Ugachi, that is the last of the Blade Fox units. So I definitely want to raise and run all of them just because I really like them and I think they're kind of fun to use. But yeah, hopefully I would like to learn more about Aster Tarticus and what's going on with that, because it would be really, really fun to play if it does end up working out. But anyway, I'm going to close the video out with that. And if you're summoning, I wish you good luck and I will see you all next time.